The first time I saw Sienna Vale cry, it was 9 minutes before the neuroanatomy final, under the bright white lights outside Lecture Theater B, with 200 future doctors pretending not to stare. She had one hand over her mouth, one hand gripping her tablet, so hard her knuckles looked bloodless, and her perfect hair was coming apart at the edges like a ribbon cut by a dull knife. In my first life, that would have been the exact moment I ran to her. I would have pulled her into the quiet corner near the vending machines, opened my private flashcard deck, and whispered, "Take it. Just don't tell anyone." I would have saved her again like I saved her through biochemistry, histology, embryology, and every mock interview she somehow won trophies for. But in this life, I stood 3 meters away with my own notes tucked under my arm and watched the girl who had built her medical school dream on my memory work finally realize that silence could be sharper than cruelty. She looked up, saw me, and mouthed my name like a prayer. Maya. Then she did something that almost made me laugh because it was so familiar, so rehearsed, so soft around the edges. She held out her tablet. "Please. Just the cranial nerves deck. I can't open mine." The hallway went quiet in that special way people pretend is accidental. Backpacks stopped rustling. Someone stopped chewing gum. Even the automatic doors behind us sighed shut, as if the building wanted to hear my answer. I remembered the last time I said yes. I remembered the investigation room, the accusation, the screenshot of my cards with her name on them, the way Sienna cried harder than me while telling everyone I had pressured her. I remembered my scholarship vanishing. I remembered my mother selling jewelry to keep me enrolled somewhere else. I remembered the truck's headlights blooming white in the rain after my future had already ended. So when Sienna said, "You know what this exam means to me," I smiled gently and said, "I know exactly what it means to you. That's why you should have studied." 6 weeks earlier, I woke up choking on antiseptic and rain. Not real antiseptic, not real rain, but memory so thick it seemed to coat the back of my throat. My ceiling was above me, not the cracked hospital light I expected, and my phone was buzzing beside my pillow with a message that should not have existed anymore. "Sienna. Morning lifesaver. Send the renal cards before 8? I'll love you forever." For 13 full seconds, I stared at the message and waited for my brain to confess it was broken. My room was the old one, the one I had before everything collapsed. The anatomy atlas was still open on my desk. My white coat from the simulation lab hung behind the door. My calendar said Monday, May 18th, the first day of revision block, 6 weeks before finals. I should have been older, exhausted, ruined, maybe dead, depending on how poetic the universe wanted to be. Instead, I was 22 again, with my medical sciences degree not yet destroyed, my conditional graduate medical school interview still alive, and Sienna still sweetly demanding the work she had never earned. I rolled out of bed, so fast I hit my shin on the drawer, and felt a ridiculous surge of gratitude for pain. Pain meant I was here. Pain meant time had bent backward, and I had been given something better than revenge. I had been given access to the moment before the first mistake. My thumb hovered above the message box. In the other life, I had sent her renal, then cardiovascular, then neuro, then an entire compressed folder titled Maya Final Deck Complete. I had told myself sharing was kindness. I had told myself medicine was teamwork. I had ignored the way she never shared back, never stayed to explain a concept to anyone, never remembered a fact unless I had written it in a clever sentence first. This time, I typed, "I'm keeping my cards private this block. Happy to study together and quiz concepts." Then I turned off my phone, sat on the floor, and shook so hard my teeth clicked. Sienna reacted in stages. First came the wounded confusion. "Wait, what do you mean private?" Then the laughing disbelief. "Maya, stop. I have no time for your character development arc." Then the tiny silver hook she always used when she needed to reel me back in. "You know I'm bad at making cards. Yours just makes sense to me." I watched each message appear while eating toast I could barely taste. Every bubble was a little autopsy of the old me. The old me would have apologized for having boundaries. The old me would have reassured her that I wasn't mad, that nothing was changing, that of course I cared about her dream. Sienna's dream had been the shrine around which our whole cohort orbited. She was the dean's favorite at open days, the glossy ambassador in university brochures, The girl who could say, pediatric neurosurgery, and make adults nod like they had just witnessed destiny. I was the quiet one with the color-coded cards, the one classmates messaged at midnight when lectures became fog, the one Sienna called my brain twin whenever she wanted a resource, and too intense whenever someone praised me. In the first life, she had used my flashcards so completely that she began speaking in my mnemonics. In tutorials, she answered questions with phrases I had written while half asleep. In interviews, she described patient-centered care using a reflection I drafted for my rural health placement. I heard my own thinking come out of her mouth and still felt proud because I thought friendship meant being useful. It took dying to understand that being useful to the wrong person is just a prettier form of self-erasure. When she finally called, I let it ring. Then I opened a new document titled Revision Block Rules and wrote 3 lines at the top. No private decks, no rescue sessions after midnight, no explaining myself twice. The first crack appeared on Wednesday in physiology lab, though nobody recognized it yet. We were measuring respiratory volumes, pretending not to hate the smell of disinfected mouthpieces, when Dr. Karim asked Sienna why forced expiratory volume drops in obstructive disease. It was a simple question, the kind my cards used to explain with a little hallway analogy. Air leaves a wide corridor quickly, but if the corridor narrows, trapped people bottleneck at the exit. In the first life, Sienna had answered it perfectly because she had memorized my exact wording. This time, she smiled, tilted her head, and said, "Because the lungs are weaker?" Dr. Karim waited. The whole bench waited. A spirometer beeped twice in the corner, rude as a laugh. "Weaker how?" he asked. Sienna's eyes flicked to me. That look used to summon me like a bell. I would jump in, add a gentle correction, make it seem like we were answering together. Instead, I uncapped my pen and wrote, "Obstruction equals flow limitation, not muscle weakness," in my notebook. The silence stretched. She tried again. "The alveoli can't inhale enough oxygen?" Dr. Karim's eyebrows rose by a millimeter. It was not cruel, but it was devastating. He corrected her, moved on, and the lab continued. Sienna spent the rest of the session laughing too loudly, tapping her acrylic nails against the bench and telling everyone she had only slept 3 hours. But I saw what other people missed. I saw the way she opened her tablet and searched her own files. I saw the panic when there was no Maya-shaped sentence waiting to save her. After class, she cornered me near the sinks and lowered her voice to the tone she used when she wanted something to sound intimate instead of strategic. "I get that you're doing this independent thing, but don't embarrass me in front of lecturers." I dried my hands slowly. I didn't say anything. "Exactly," she snapped, and there it was, the truth dressed as an accusation. By the second week, my refusal had become a campus weather system. People felt it before they understood it. In the library, heads lifted when Sienna approached my table and lowered when she left empty-handed. In the cafeteria, her friends asked why I was being weirdly competitive, now that final rankings mattered. In the tutorial group, she joked that I had gone dark academia villain mode, and everyone laughed because it sounded harmless, because pretty girls could wrap a blade in glitter and call it banter. I did not defend myself. Defense was oxygen, and Sienna knew how to breathe other people's explanations until they suffocated. Instead, I opened a public folder called Concept Prompts and shared it with the entire cohort. Not answers. Not my finished cards. Prompts. Questions that force people to build their own reasoning. Explain why hypocalcemia increases neuronal excitability without using the word obvious. Compare nephritic and nephrotic syndromes as if explaining to a worried parent. Draw the brachial plexus from memory, then explain one clinical injury. The honest students loved it because it helped them learn. The lazy ones hated it because it refused to chew for them. Sienna called it performative generosity. I called it clean hands. That same week, she tried to rebuild her kingdom by starting a private, high-yield finals group without me. She invited the loudest students, the richest students, the students who loved saying they had not studied before getting distinctions. For 48 hours, her table was full. Then someone asked her to explain countercurrent multiplication, and she drew the loop of Henley backward. The exodus was quiet. A person here, a person there. By Friday, her high-yield group had become 4 people watching YouTube videos at double speed while Sienna pretended she preferred studying alone. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt something colder and cleaner. I felt space opening around me where her need used to be. The pattern should have continued like that. Slow cracks, small humiliations, Sienna learning in private that a borrowed ladder disappears when the owner walks away. But rebirth had not brought me back into a gentle world. It brought me back into the exact machine that crushed me, and machines do not stop just because one cog remembers. In week 3, the anonymous confession page posted, "Some people are gatekeeping resources because they can't handle not being the main character." By lunchtime, it had 500 likes. By dinner, someone had commented, "Imagine wanting to be a doctor, but refusing to help classmates." I read it while sitting in the pathology museum between jars of diseased organs, which felt almost too symbolic, even for my life. My first instinct was the old one: explain. Screenshot my public prompts. Show my messages. Prove I was not selfish, not cruel, not the villain. But the universe had not dragged me through death, so I could argue with anonymous accounts run by people who failed open book quizzes. I locked my phone and looked at the preserved heart in front of me. It was enlarged, heavy, misshapen by years of pressure. Hypertrophy, our lecturer had said, was the body trying to survive a load it was never meant to carry. I wondered how many years I had spent hypertrophying around Sienna, making myself bigger, stronger, more efficient, just so I could carry both of us and call it love. That night, instead of responding online, I hosted an open revision session in the old seminar room. 32 students came. I made them teach each other in pairs, correct each other's diagrams, explain mechanisms out loud until the room sounded like a marketplace of nervous brilliance. Sienna did not come, but at 11:47 p.m., she messaged me, "You're enjoying this?"
I typed, "I'm studying."
Then I deleted even that and sent nothing. The strangest thing about refusing to save someone is how quickly they start calling it murder. Sienna began collecting witnesses to the crime of my boundaries. She cried to Talia that I had abandoned her during the most stressful block of our lives. She told Marcus I was jealous because she had a better shot at the dean's pathway interview. She told Priya that I had always been possessive over our flashcards, which was impressive because our apparently meant I wrote them. She downloaded them, and we both pretended that was collaboration. The rumors reached me in pieces, carried by uncomfortable classmates who wanted to warn me without choosing a side. "She's saying you changed after mock rankings. She's saying you deleted shared files. She's saying you promised to help her and then backed out." Each time, I thanked them and asked if they wanted to revise cardiac murmurs. My calm irritated people more than anger would have. Anger would have made the story symmetrical. 2 ambitious girls fighting before finals. Calm made them look at the shape of the thing. Why was Sienna collapsing because one student stopped feeding her notes? Why did her confidence depend on my labor? Why did she know my file titles better than she knew renal physiology? The questions moved through the cohort like dye through water. Slowly, then all at once. The next tutorial, when Sienna announced she had made a comprehensive neuro deck, 3 students asked if she could explain the difference between an upper and lower motor neuron lesion before sharing it. She laughed. No one laughed with her. Then she said she had another class and left 14 minutes early, leaving behind a coffee cup with lipstick on the rim and a printed page of my old cranial nerve mnemonic from last year. That page changed everything. I found it under her chair after tutorial, folded twice, my handwriting scanned badly at the edges. It was from a deck I had made in first year, before Sienna and I were close, before I learned to watermark my files, before I understood that theft often wears the perfume of admiration. At first, seeing it only made me tired. Of course, she had saved old copies. Of course my words were still floating around her devices, like ghosts. Then I noticed the margin. Someone had written, in Sienna's neat slanted hand, "Ask M for updated lesion table." She always fixes this. Not revise lesion table. Not learn lesion table. Ask M. I held that page in my hand and felt the last sentimental thread snap. Until then, a traitorous part of me had kept offering excuses for her. Maybe she was terrified. Maybe pressure had made her selfish. Maybe in the first life, when she accused me, she panicked and chose herself once. But there it was, simple and ugly. She had designed her survival around my surrender. I took the page home, scanned it, and put it in a folder with every message she had sent asking for resources, every screenshot of her calling my private work ours, every anonymous post that appeared within minutes of her complaints. I did not know if I would need it. I hoped I would not. But hope, I had learned, is not a plan. Then I did something that would have terrified the old me. I booked an appointment with the academic integrity advisor, not to accuse Sienna, not yet, but to ask a general question. How do I protect my original study resources if someone copies them and later claims I gave them exam material? The advisor looked up from her keyboard a little too quickly, and I realized the machine had gears I had never seen before. Her name was Ms. Ivers, and she had the kind of face that made lying feel administratively inconvenient. She listened without interrupting as I explained, carefully, that I produced extensive revision resources, that I had shared too freely in the past, that I was concerned about attribution and misuse. I did not mention death, time, or the way my future had once been erased by a girl with glossy hair and better tears. I showed her the old scan page, the messages, the public prompts. She asked whether any of my resources contained content from restricted assessments. No, I said. They're based on lectures, textbooks, and my own summaries. She nodded. Then keep them private, keep version histories, and document distribution. If someone pressures you, do not engage informally. Redirect them to official channels. It sounded so simple when she said it. Keep records. Set boundaries. Redirect. The whole tragedy of my first life might have been preventable with 3 boring verbs. Before I left, she gave me one more piece of advice. Students under pressure sometimes misrepresent where material came from. Protecting yourself early is not unkind. That sentence sat in my chest like a new organ. On the walk back across campus, jacaranda petals stuck to the wet pavement, purple bruises under my shoes. I saw Sienna on the library steps, surrounded by her friends, laughing with her head thrown back. For one stupid second, I missed loving her. Not because she deserved it, but because loving the wrong person had been easier than grieving the version of myself who did. Then her eyes met mine, and her smile sharpened. She lifted her phone. A second later, mine buzzed. You're making people uncomfortable. Just send neuro, and we can be normal. I replied, use the official revision guide. Then I blocked her for 12 hours, long enough to hear my own thoughts. Week 4 was when Sienna stopped asking and started hunting. I knew because my accounts began receiving password reset emails at 2 a.m. Someone tried to access my cloud drive from a device named Sienna's iPad because arrogance, like anatomy, has landmarks. Someone requested access to an archived folder titled Finals Master Deck 2024, which did not exist in this timeline except as bait I had created after meeting Ms. Ivers. Not harmful bait, not false notes, just an empty folder with a document inside that said, "This file is private. Access attempts are logged." The request came at 2:13 a.m. from Sienna's university email. By 2:16 a.m., it was withdrawn. By breakfast, she was in the group chat asking whether anyone else had received weird phishing emails, and I nearly dropped my spoon. The audacity would have been funny if it had not once destroyed me. I forwarded the access logs to myself, to a backup email, and to Ms. Ivers, with no commentary except dates and times. Then I went to campus and attended a mock practical where Sienna identified the vagus nerve as the hypoglossal, corrected herself to glossopharyngeal, and finally said, "It's one of the throat ones," with a smile so bright it looked stapled on. Dr. Leung did not smile back. In surgery, he said, "One of the throat ones is not an answer." The room inhaled. Sienna blinked too fast. I looked down at my specimen tray and labeled the nerves cleanly, one by one. That afternoon, 3 people asked to join my open revision session. Not because I was nicer, because I was safer. There is a difference, and after 2 lives, I finally respected it. The closer finals came, the more Sienna's dream began making noise as it cracked. It was not one dramatic shatter. It was a series of tiny, public sounds. A wrong answer in pharmacology. A blank stare in a clinical reasoning workshop. A trembling laugh when a lecturer asked her to justify a diagnosis beyond the buzzwords. Her friend stopped saving seats for her because sitting near panic feels contagious when everyone is trying to survive. Her social media changed too. The glossy study reels vanished, replaced by quotes about betrayal and energy vampires. Once, she posted a photo of her desk at midnight with a caption, "Some of us don't have the privilege of being naturally smart." In the corner of the photo, reflected faintly in her laptop screen, I could see my old flashcard interface open. She deleted the post within 10 minutes, but screenshots move faster than shame. I added it to the folder. Still, I did not report her.
Not then.
I wanted clean revenge, which meant I could not become the kind of person she had accused me of being. I would not sabotage.
I would not lie.
I would not leak false notes or trick her into failing. I would simply remove my spine from under her feet and let gravity explain itself. My own days became brutally simple.
Wake.
Gym for 30 minutes so anxiety had somewhere to go. Library by 8. Teach one open session every second evening. Sleep before midnight, even when guilt knocked. Sometimes at night, I dreamed of the truck again. I would wake with my heart sprinting and my hands curled into fists around the blanket. On those nights, I whispered the same sentence until dawn softened the window. I am not here to be useful. I am here to live. The final week arrived wet and electric, the campus buzzing with caffeine, fear, and the particular body odor of students who believe deodorant is optional during academic crisis. The exam schedule was brutal. Neuroanatomy written paper in the morning, practical stations after lunch, integrated viva the next day. Ranking from these exams would determine who kept conditional interviews for the graduate medical program. Sienna's entire identity rested on that list. Mine used to as well, but the second life had changed the shape of my ambition. I still wanted medicine. I still wanted the white coat, the wards, the impossible privilege of being trusted near suffering. But I no longer wanted it as proof that I was worth saving. On the Sunday before exams, I held the last open revision session. 51 students came, including people who had once liked the anonymous post calling me selfish. Nobody mentioned it. We worked through lesions, renal compensation, endocrine feedback loops, and the brachial plexus until the white bards looked like a nervous system had exploded across them. At the end, a repeat student named Anna waited while everyone packed up. She twisted her pen in her fingers and said, "I passed the mock because of your prompts. Not because they gave answers. Because they made me realize I didn't understand anything." Her eyes filled, and she laughed in embarrassment. "That sounds bad." "No," I said. "That's the point." When she left, I stayed alone in the room for a minute, staring at the ghost of our diagrams. In the first life, I had measured my worth by Sienna's success. In this one, my work had spread without being stolen. It had made other people stronger without making me disappear. That was the first victory. The rest was just weather. Exam morning began with thunder. Not metaphorical thunder, not emotional thunder, actual thunder rolling over the city hard enough to make the lecture theater windows tremble. I arrived early wearing the same navy coat I had worn in my first life, because some part of me wanted to walk the old path and prove it no longer owned me. The hallway outside lecture theater B smelled like wet umbrellas and espresso. Students stood in clusters, murmuring cranial nerve branches like prayers. I saw Marcus drawing pathways on his palm, Priya breathing into a paper bag, Anna with her eyes closed and lips moving silently. Then I saw Sienna. For a moment, I almost did not recognize her. The polish was still there at a distance. Cream blazer, perfect boots, gold necklace, hair pinned half up. But closer, the details betrayed her. Mascara gathered at the corner of one eye. Her tablet screen had a spiderweb crack across the top. Her fingers were trembling so violently she had to hold her stylus with both hands. She was surrounded by no one. That was the first silence. She looked at me the way drowning people look at shore and came straight over. "Maya," she said, voice sweet and ruined, My neuro deck won't sync. I said nothing. She stepped closer. I know you have yours offline.
Please.
Just cranial nerves and lesions. I'll send it back after. I won't even download. A few heads turned. Thunder cracked again, theatrical and unnecessary. I could have exposed her right there. I could have said, your dream is not my responsibility. I could have said, you killed mine once. Instead, I gave her the cleanest answer in the world.
No.
The word landed harder than I expected. Sienna's face changed, not into sadness, but into disbelief, as if I had slapped a crown off her head. Are you serious? She whispered. Before finals? Especially before finals. Her lips parted. I watched calculations move behind her eyes. Tears?
Anger?
Witnesses? She chose tears. They gathered instantly, obedient little soldiers. I don't know what happened to you, she said louder, letting the hallway receive her pain. But this isn't who you used to be.
That almost got me.
Not because it was true, but because it was the cruelest possible compliment. She was right. I was not who I used to be. That girl had been generous until generosity became a wound. That girl had mistaken exploitation for friendship and silence for loyalty. That girl had died under headlights with rain in her mouth. You're right, I said. I'm not. Behind her, Dr. Kareem appeared with a clipboard, followed by Ms. Ivers and 2 exam coordinators. The hallway's nervous chatter thinned. Sienna noticed them and wiped her cheeks quickly, turning her cry into a brave little sniffle. Students, Dr. Kareem called. Before entry, place all devices in the labeled trays. No notes, no smartwatches, no earbuds. You know the procedure. Everyone moved at once, grateful for instruction. Sienna hesitated for 1 second too long. It was tiny, but Ms. Ivers saw it. So did I. Sienna looked at her tablet, then at the trays, then at me with something like hatred flashing under the water in her eyes. She locked the screen and placed it face down. The crack across the glass caught the fluorescent light like a vein. The exam should have started at 9. At 8:56, the second silence happened. One of the coordinators lifted Sienna's tablet from the tray and frowned. It had lit up with a notification, large enough for anyone nearby to read. Maya final deck complete download failed. My name floated on her lock screen like a body surfacing. Sienna lunged a half step forward before remembering where she was. That's old, she said too quickly. It's from a shared folder. Everyone has it. No one spoke. Ms. Ivers looked at me, not accusingly, just confirming. I shook my head once. Dr. Kareem's expression did not change, which made it worse. He asked Sienna to step aside. She laughed. It came out broken. For a notification? You can't be serious. We have an exam.
Exactly, he said.
Step aside. The hallway split around them. Students entered the lecture theater in a slow, horrified stream, each trying to look forward while their peripheral vision feasted. Sienna's dream did not explode. It was escorted 3 meters to the left near the vending machines, the same corner where I had saved her in the first life. The geometry of it nearly stopped my breathing. Ms. Ivers asked whether the device contained unauthorized materials. Sienna said no. The coordinator asked her to unlock it. Sienna said her Face ID was not working because of the cracked screen. Dr. Kareem said she could enter her passcode. She stared at him. 5 seconds passed.
10.
The thunder outside softened to rain. Finally, she typed. The tablet opened to a Cloud Drive access page, and there, in recent files, was the empty folder I had created. Finals Master Deck 2024. Under it sat 3 failed access attempts, all from the night before. Below that, a downloaded copy of my first-year cranial nerve deck, renamed Sienna Neuro Elite. The hallway became so quiet I could hear the vending machine humming. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, but the body is less poetic than revenge fantasies. My hands went cold. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I was back in the investigation room from the first life, watching adults decide whether my future belonged to me. Ms. Ivers asked Sienna where the files came from. Sienna looked at me. There it was, the old doorway opening. She could drag me through it. She could cry, say I had shared them, say we collaborated, say I was punishing her now because of a personal dispute. In the old timeline, she had done exactly that, and I had been too shocked to protect myself. This time, before she could speak, Ms. Ivers said, "For clarity, Maya contacted our office 3 weeks ago regarding protection of her original resources and potential misuse. We have version history and access logs." Sienna's mouth closed. The doorway vanished. Dr. Kareem's gaze moved from Sienna to me, and something like apology passed through it, though he had not wronged me in this life. Sienna tried one more time. "She's setting me up," she said, but the sentence had no architecture. It collapsed as soon as she released it. "With your device?" Ms. Ivers asked. "With your login?" I was desperate, Sienna snapped, then seemed to hear herself. Her face strained. The admission did not need to be complete. It only needed to be honest enough to cut her. Dr. Kareem instructed the coordinator to document the incident and allowed Sienna to sit the exam under irregularity conditions, pending investigation. That was the academic version of a public execution. Quiet, procedural, impossible to argue with. As she passed me to enter the theater, she whispered, "You ruined me." I looked at her, really looked, and felt no hatred. Only distance. "No," I said. "I stopped holding you together." The written exam began 9 minutes late. It is strange how life-changing moments must still make room for multiple-choice questions. My hands shook through the first M, a case about a man with unilateral facial weakness, but by the second page, training took over.
Lésion localisation.
Renal compensation. Calcium signaling. Brachial plexus injuries. Questions unfolded like rooms I had cleaned myself. Across the aisle, Sienna sat with 2 empty seats around her, writing in frantic bursts, then stopping to stare at nothing. Once, she pressed her fingers to her temples and mouthed something I could not hear. I turned back to my paper. That was the discipline of my second life. Do not watch the fall so long that you miss your own climb. At lunch, nobody knew what to say. The cohort gathered under the covered walkway while rain hammered the roof and phones buzzed with rumors. Some said Sienna had been caught with leaked exam answers. Others said she hacked my account. Others said I had reported her out of jealousy. Rumors are bacteria. They multiply fastest in warm ignorance. I could have corrected everyone. Instead, I ate my sandwich and reviewed practical anatomy with Anna and Priya. When Marcus approached, looking sheepish, he said, "I owe you an apology." I looked up. "For what?" "For thinking you were being dramatic." He rubbed the back of his neck. "About the flashcards." I swallowed. The old me would have made him comfortable. Waved it off, said it was fine. The new me said, "Thanks. I appreciate that." Then we went back to identifying lesions. Growth, I discovered, is sometimes just not rescuing other people from the discomfort they earned. The practical stations after lunch felt like walking through a museum of everything I had fought to keep. At Station 1, I identified the internal capsule and explained why a lesion caused contralateral motor deficits. At Station 2, I traced the facial nerve branches on a model while the examiner nodded. At Station 3, I nearly smiled because the pin structure was the vagus nerve, clean and unmistakable. "Not one of the throat ones?" Dr. Leung asked dryly, and for a second I thought I had hallucinated his humor. "Cranial nerve 10, I said, steady. "Parasympathetic supply to thoracic and abdominal viscera, motor to muscles of the pharynx and larynx except." "Good," he said, cutting me off before I recited the entire universe. Sienna was 3 stations ahead. I saw her only in fragments, a dropped pencil, a whispered request for the question to be repeated, her hand hovering over a specimen with no landing place. I did not need to see more. The day had already done its work. After the final bell, we spilled into the corridor exhausted and damp, everyone speaking too loudly in relief. Sienna did not come out with us. She remained inside with the coordinator. 10 minutes later, an email hit the cohort inbox reminding students that unauthorized possession or attempted access to private assessment-related materials would be investigated under academic misconduct procedures. It named no one. It did not have to. A second email came only to me from Ms. Ivers. Thank you for your earlier documentation. Please keep all records available. No action is required from you at this stage. I read it twice, then closed my phone. No action required. The most beautiful sentence I had ever seen. But Sienna was not finished. People like her do not lose a staircase and stop climbing. They look for a wall to scale. That evening, while I was at home reheating soup, she arrived at my apartment building soaked from the rain and furious enough to forget she was supposed to be fragile. My flatmate buzzed her in before I could stop it, assuming any crying woman asking for me must be a friend. Sienna stood in our doorway with mascara under her eyes and water dripping from her cream blazer onto the floorboards. Without the campus watching, her softness was gone. "Withdraw your complaint," she said. I kept the chain on the door. "I didn't file one today." "Don't play saint." Her voice shook, but not with fear. "You planned this for weeks." "I protected myself for weeks." "You made that folder." "An empty folder you tried to access." Her jaw tightened. "Because you cut me off." There was again the worldview in one sentence. She had reached for my locked door and blamed me for the bruise on her hand. "Sienna," I said, "go home." Her eyes flashed. "If I lose my interview, I'll tell them you sold decks. I'll tell them everyone used your cards. I'll tell them you made money tutoring without approval." The threats came fast now, ugly little birds breaking from a cage. In the first life, they would have worked because I believed danger became smaller when you appeased it. In this life, I lifted my phone so she could see the recording screen. Her mouth stopped moving. "I started recording when you said withdraw," I said. "Leave." For a second, I thought she might lunge at me. Instead, she laughed once, flat and empty. "You really think you're the hero?" I looked at the chain between us, thin but doing its job.
No.
"I think I'm the door." Then I closed it. The next morning was the integrated Viva, and the campus felt different, as if everyone had aged 1 year overnight. Sienna arrived in a black blazer instead of cream, hair tied low, face pale and scrubbed clean.
No ULA. No entourage.
No performance. The investigation had not removed her from exams, but it had removed the weather around her. People no longer adjusted themselves to her mood. They stepped around her like she was a spill on the floor. I did not enjoy that as much as I thought I would. Public disgrace has a smell, metallic and human. It reminded me that even deserved consequences are still consequences, not entertainment. My Viva panel asked me about a patient with progressive weakness, then pushed me through differential diagnoses, lesion sites, and management priorities. I stumbled once on a pharmacology mechanism, corrected myself, and kept going. When they asked why I wanted medicine, I did not give the polished answer I had rehearsed in both lives. I said, because illness takes control away from people, and I want to be trained well enough to give some of it back without taking more. The room went quiet in a way that felt unlike judgment. One examiner wrote something down. Afterward, I sat in the courtyard under a bruised sky and let the adrenaline leave my body. Sienna's Viva was scheduled after mine. Through the glass, I saw her enter. 30 minutes later, she came out with her face perfectly blank, the kind of blankness people use when emotion would be too expensive. She looked at me, but did not approach. For the first time since I had known her, she seemed to understand that I was not a resource, not an enemy, not a mirror angled toward her best side. I was simply someone beyond her reach. Results came 3 days later at 4 p.m. because universities love releasing life-altering information at times designed to ruin digestion. I opened mine alone in the library, in the same seat where I had once cried over Sienna's messages. Distinction in neuroanatomy. High distinction in practical. Viva result. Outstanding clinical reasoning and reflective maturity. Overall rank. 3rd. My conditional medical interview remained active, with a recommendation for academic peer tutor consideration the following semester. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Not first. Not miraculous. Not cinematic perfection. 3rd. In my first life, I would have hated that because Sienna had taught me that anything below worship was failure. In this life, 3rd felt like standing on solid ground after years underwater. Around me, students began reacting, Gasps, laughter, swearing, one person sobbing openly into their hoodie. Anna passed.
Priya passed.
Marcus did better than expected and punched the air so hard a librarian threatened him with her eyes. Sienna's result did not appear in the public ranking list. Instead, a rumor arrived 20 minutes later, then confirmation through the clean, merciless language of policy. Her results were withheld pending academic integrity review, and her dean's pathway interview eligibility was suspended until resolution. Suspended, not destroyed, not dead, but cracked, visibly right down the center. The dream she had polished for everyone to admire was suddenly conditional, questioned, fragile. I waited for triumph to flood me. It came, but softer than expected, mixed with grief for the girl I had been and the years she wasted trying to be kind enough to be safe.
Sienna emailed me that night. No greeting. No apology.
Just a paragraph of panic pretending to be accusation. You don't understand what you've done. My parents already told everyone I'm getting into medicine. My whole life is this. You could fix it by saying you shared the folder by mistake. They trust you. Please. I know we've both made mistakes. I read it at my desk while rain tapped the window, gentler now, like the weather was tired too. The old Maya stirred inside me, because old selves do not die cleanly. They whisper. They say, maybe one more rescue. Maybe mercy means absorbing the damage. Maybe her dream matters more because she screams louder. I opened a reply. My fingers hovered. Then I looked at the 3 rules still pinned above my desk. No private decks. No rescue sessions after midnight. No explaining myself twice. I added a 4th. No lying to soften someone else's consequence. My reply was short enough to feel surgical. I will not make false statements. Please communicate through the university process. I sent it before fear could decorate it. Then I cried. Not because I felt guilty, exactly, but because freedom is not always a clean emotion. Sometimes freedom is realizing no one is coming to punish you for choosing yourself, and your body, trained by years of fear, does not know where to put the leftover terror. My mother called while I was still wiping my face. I almost did not answer, but then I did, and when she asked how exams went, I told her the truth. I think I'm going to be okay. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You always were. You just kept giving pieces away. The academic integrity hearing happened 2 weeks later, after finals had ended and the campus had emptied into that strange post-exam silence where even the pigeons look academically traumatized. I was not required to attend Sienna's full hearing, only to provide a statement about my resources, access permissions, and prior contact with Ms. Ivers. I wore a plain black dress and brought printed documentation in a folder so organized it looked like it had a grudge. Sienna sat across the waiting area with her parents. Her mother held a designer handbag in her lap, like a shield. Her father stared at the floor. Sienna did not cry this time. She looked smaller without tears, which surprised me. Tears had been part of her architecture. Without them, she was just a frightened student who had mistaken charm for competence for too long. When Ms. Ivers called me in, I answered questions clearly. Yes, the work was mine. No, I had not granted access. Yes, I had offered public concept prompts to the cohort. Yes, I had documented pressure because I feared misrepresentation. No, I did not believe old lecture-based flashcards were exam answers, but they were private academic work. The panel thanked me. It took 11 minutes. As I left, Sienna stood. Her mother grabbed her wrist, but Sienna pulled free and followed me into the corridor. For one wild second, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, You'll never survive medicine if you're this selfish. It should have hurt. It almost did. Then I looked through the window behind her at a group of first years laughing over coffee, alive with the hopeful ignorance we all had before pressure revealed us. Maybe, I said. But at least my patients won't have to wonder whose knowledge I'm using. The decision came in a letter I never saw, but its shadow crossed campus by sunset. Sienna received a formal misconduct finding for unauthorized access attempts and misrepresentation of academic work, a 0 for the practical preparation component tied to the incident, mandatory remediation, and suspension from the dean's pathway interview for that cycle. She was not expelled. In the first life, I had wanted expulsion the way starving people want bread. I imagined her erased like she erased me. But when the consequence arrived, measured and official, I felt something better than vengeance. I felt the world correct by 1 degree. She could still study, still grow, still become someone other than the girl who stole and called it need. But she could not step over my body to reach the door. That was enough. The anonymous confession page posted one final message about cancel culture in competitive degrees, and for once, the comments did not bend toward Sienna. Someone wrote, "Private notes are not communal property." Someone else wrote, "If your dream depends on stealing, maybe it was never your dream." I did not like the post. I did not comment. I had no desire to feed the machine from the other side. Instead, I went to the library and began preparing for my medical interview. This time, when I drafted my answer to tell us about a challenge you overcame, I did not write about resilience in vague, pretty language. I wrote about boundaries, integrity, and the difference between helping someone learn and allowing them to hide behind you. It was not the kind of answer that wins applause. It was the kind that keeps you alive. Months later, on the morning of my interview, I saw Sienna one last time at the campus clinic. She was not wearing a blazer. She had on a hoodie, leggings, no makeup, hair in a rough braid. For a second, we both froze beside the hand sanitizer station like two ghosts meeting in a hallway neither haunted anymore. I expected anger. Maybe another threat. Maybe the old polished smile. Instead, she looked tired. Human. "Maya," she said. My name sounded different without demand attached to it. I waited. She swallowed. "I'm repeating the component next term." I heard. I wanted to say, she stopped, and I saw the battle on her face. Pride fighting language. Shame fighting habit. I wanted to say you didn't make me do it. It was not a full apology, but it was the first sentence she had ever given me that did not try to take something. I nodded. No, I didn't. Her eyes shone, but no tears fell. "I don't know how to study," she admitted. So quietly the old me ached. There it was, the small rotten seed under the glamorous tree. Not stupidity.
Not evil, exactly.
Emptiness disguised for years as excellence. In another life, I might have mistaken that confession for an invitation to save her. In this one, I understood that compassion did not require access to my spine. "Then learn," I said. Not cruelly.
Not warmly.
Just truthfully. I walked into the interview with my notes in my own bag, my thoughts in my own head, and no one else's future chained to my throat. When the panel asked why I wanted to become a doctor, I gave the same answer as the Viva, but stronger. I said control matters. Integrity matters. Knowledge matters because patients cannot be treated by borrowed confidence. One interviewer smiled. Another nodded. I did not know then whether I would get in, but I knew something more important. I would never again build a dream that required me to disappear. The offer arrived on a Friday afternoon while I was tutoring first years in the seminar room that had become mine by accident and survival. We were halfway through explaining acid-base compensation when my phone lit up. Graduate medical program. Interview outcome. My student saw my face change before I did. Anna, now annoyingly confident, said, "Open it." I told her to focus on metabolic alkalosis. She said, "Open it or I'll explain it wrong on purpose." I opened it. Congratulations. One word, and the room tilted. Not because my life became perfect, not because trauma vanished, not because rebirth wrapped itself neatly with a bow. One word, and the girl who died in the rain finally reached the door she had been crawling toward. I sat down hard. Someone screamed. Someone hugged me. Someone knocked over coffee. Anna cried more than I did, which felt dramatically unfair. Later, alone, I forwarded the email to my parents and then opened my old flashcard app. The private decks were still there: renal, neuro, cardio, endocrine, musculoskeletal, all the little rooms I had built with discipline and fear and hope. For a long time, I looked at the export button. Then I created a new public deck. Not answers, not shortcuts, but teaching cards with prompts, explanations, and warnings where students usually memorized without understanding. At the top, I wrote, Use this to build your own knowledge. Do not use it to borrow mine. I shared it with the cohort. Then I closed the app and stepped outside. The sky was clear for once.
No thunder. No rain.
Just evening light over the wet pavement, turning every puddle gold. In my first life, Sienna took my flashcards and my future cracked before exams. In this one, I stopped sharing what was never hers, and her medical school dream cracked before the exam even began. But that was not the ending. The ending was quieter and far more dangerous to anyone who had ever mistaken my kindness for weakness. I kept my work. I kept my name. I kept walking. And this time, when the doors opened, I entered as myself.